Hey, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. So by now I've finished Baldur's Gate 3 twice. I'm currently on my third playthrough, probably my last as well. And I would like to share with you a few mistakes that I've made throughout my two playthroughs and things that maybe I could have done better if I knew them sooner. But since I like to discover, most of the things myself, here we are today sharing with you some of the things that I found important. And before we move on, I just want to give you a heads up that there's going to be spoilers in today's video. First of all, and the thing that I probably regret the most is not experimenting enough. During my first playthrough of the game, I came in, brand new player, thinking the point of Baldur's Gate 3 is to remove my goddamn tadpole. I'm gonna just zoom and just do that no matter what are the consequences. I'm just gonna, bash through everything and get it done. Getting it done made me miss out on a lot of opportunities and a lot of world and a lot of NPCs and a lot of story, which obviously is amazing. My second playthrough, I didn't do that at all. I thought to myself, how can I have more fun replaying the same game where I know the ending and have more fun with it? And it's because I've experimented more, I've looked around more. I've done so many more fun things like steal a little bit, multi-class to a higher degree than I've done in my first playthrough, play more of my companions. It was a much better playthrough and I highly recommend that you would experiment with the game. A second thing I wanted to mention is something in Act 1. Volo, the bard that you find first with the druids and then later on you find him in the goblin camp. Now, Volo, if you kill the goblins, he's going to be part of your camp, at least for the time being. He has a dialogue where you can ask him to do some research on the tadpoles, right? And he's gonna take a couple of nights to do this research, and at one point he's gonna have a dialogue for you telling you that he managed to find something. He starts poking at your eye, and eventually he is not able to get the tadpole out, obviously, but he will replace your lost eye with another eye that gives you a perk to permanently see invisible units. Next, I want to talk about the hardest thing in tactician difficulty, which are not really the mobs or the bosses, but instead finding camp supplies. At least if you don't want to steal them, right? If you're just going naturally through the game. I've had really big problems, especially in Act 2, finding camp supplies simply because there's not that many merchants like in Act 1 or 3, and because of that I was just literally just struggling. Now if you can put aside some camp supplies during Act 1, or maybe you want to steal them or whatnot, or maybe you can just be a little bit more cautious with how many long rests you take during Act 1. This is assuming you're doing a lot of combat. If your playthrough is heavily based on dialogue, then that's absolutely no problem because you're not going to need to rest so often, right? Stealing in general is something that I never did throughout my first playthrough because I felt a little bit bad for the NPCs and the merchants. Everyone's having like a hard time. There's geeks, there's tadpoles, there's all sorts of problems. I'm not going to steal from them as well. However, for my second playthrough, I stole a lot and I was so rich that I didn't even have things to spend my gold on. I had a character for my second playthrough that was very good at stealth, and so especially in Act 1, NPCs are very, very easy to steal from, but also in Act 2. And I just went behind them, turned on turn-based mode, by the way, very good to have for stealing in general. And I stole, I walked out of range, and then went to camp so they can restock after I stole enough from them that day. Went to camp, they would restock, come back again, steal, and I just repeat the same process. This is basically endless gold, right? And endless items. Especially stealing from other NPCs that are not necessarily merchants. It's very, very fun because I got to meet all of these characters for my first playthrough, so I knew their story. Now I wanted to see what they have in their pockets. The next thing I want to mention, something that really spiced up my second playthrough, was talking to animals and speaking with the dead. The only way to get the truth out of things in general and what's really happening is to use one of these two. Animals, generally speaking, they don't lie. They just tell you things that they have noticed as plainly as it is. And the spell to speak with the dead is just absolutely glorious simply because you get the truth, you get honesty out of that corpse, when in fact most NPCs generally tend to hide their real intent, or maybe just keep it for later during your story. Sometimes I had to make hard decisions, and I don't generally want to restart the dialogue and big decisions. So what I did do was, after I had to kill an NPC or a companion or whatnot, I did use the Speak with the Dead spell, so I can just get an insight whether I was right or wrong. And my God, there were so many times when I felt so bad, and there was many times when I felt, wow, I'm happy I did this. Learning spells from your scrolls instead of just using the scrolls as a one-time action. I found that not that late into my first playthrough, but it was quite a big discovery. I had a wizard and they are able to learn these spells. And after my wizard had learned enough, or all of them that I had, the excess, of course, I used as normally. But just saying, you can use them, you can learn them too, so that you can have access to them at any time. Switching weapons to melee before ending your turn, because sometimes you just have to use your bow, right, to range NPCs out. However, having a melee weapon as the active one when it's not your turn is actually pretty valuable, because it triggers attack of opportunity, and it also has some perks for some classes. For example, if you don't have a shield active on a class where you have shield perks, then the game's not going to take them into account when it's other NPC's turn. And so if you need to use a bow, don't forget to swap back to melee weapons in case you take advantage from them before ending that turn. And at the end of the video, a couple of basics, even though they are very obvious, I still hit my head on some of them. Like, for example, saving my game. Can you imagine having played 2-3 hours intense combat or whatever dialogue options, and then your hand has a spasm and you choose the wrong dialogue option? And a quick note on the save games: the autosave and quick save features, they overwrite each other, so you can only have a limited number of them, at which point older ones start to disappear. However, if you want to save a specific moment in time, even way back in Act 1, assuming you're in Act 3 right now, then saving them and giving it a name with like a manual save, that preserves it for as long as you want to. A few very important traits that I would like to recommend to you would be, for example, perception. This is something that lets you discover the game so much more than without having any. Just one character in your party having a high level of perception, or many points into it, is enough to make that check and to let you discover a button on a wall that's hidden to you as a human being. You don't see it, but your character in game might. Opens a secret door. Behind the painting there's a safe, there's a box underneath which there's something, there's a mount that contains something. It's so cool to have a lot of perception. Nature is also something that I found very useful and very fun to play with. Survival the same way. And you can get these proficiencies, these perks, starting with character customization, where, for example, your class and also your race determine how much starting points into one of these perks you get. And so what I'm trying to say with this segment is that having a balanced group is super important. One person in your group has a super high level of perception, the other person has a super high level of nature and survival, the other person has is very charismatic and does this and that. So balance. Try to set up your classes as such, where you get a lot of value out of several different things in game. It's just going to enhance your experience so much more. Looting is also very important, very obvious as well. Equipping your other characters in the party with good gear is also important, but quite obvious. And keep in mind, when you throw gear on your other characters, make sure they are proficient with them, because in many cases you would be hindering their damage output or whatever purpose they serve. Maybe they are stealthy characters and you have them equipped with plate just because you've swapped their class recently. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for your time watching it. I hope some of these things helped in case you are a brand new player to the game. And as for myself, I wish you a great day. I will see you very soon here on my YouTube channel. Until then, stay safe, take care.